Hello and welcome to the Tournament Poker Project, all the way from Essex. My name's Jon.
And I'm the Tain.
The Tain, and we're sticking with it. Love it. We are two recreational poker players, and this is our journey to get good enough at poker to play in the World Series of Poker. And not just play, but, and I say this every week, but we want to crush the World Series of Poker. Don't we? Well, one day. The first time we go, I reckon we're going to be really nervous. And like, we'll be like, oh my God, we're ready. Like, we are ready to go. Like, we feel like we've got a positive ROI or whatever. And, we're confident and we can play different types of, and we'll go. And probably the first time we go, we're just going to absolutely, I don't know, I reckon I'll be pretty nervous.
Yeah, like I thought about this actually. Like, I'm going to get T-shirts made up for the very first day. One of them that just says "First day, baby." First day, baby. Yeah, and then the next one is if I get to day two, it's I don't know where I am. My intention was only to play at day one, but also on the back just saying I made a podcast just for today.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. I made a.
So it's just like I'm not just nervous. There's an entire freaking podcast built up around this first day. So if I when I crash out third hand.
That's a really cool thought, actually, to think, like, say we did like win something big or got the chance to, got to the final table and we, had a few words and we could mention, well, there's a podcast. I wonder how many people would then go back and listen to the podcast.
I like how you're politely saying you'd have a word, like they'd be doing an interview with me, just like, how's it been going? Well, the podcast, blah, 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 podcast. I do a podcast, blah, 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 blah. What about this hand? Yeah, I was thinking about this on the podcast. And there's a podcast.
Yeah, that would be so cool. That would be so cool, though. Like, and it's all documented. Like, going back to when we were, even like in April when we started this, just probably talking a lot of crap, compared to what we know now. No disrespect to our past selves, but we've definitely come along, and there's still a long way to go, but we've definitely come along, and it'll be interesting to listen back one day.
Yeah, and now we're both sitting there at the final table of World Series main event. Like, it's a pretty good journey. People will probably tune in at that point.
Could you imagine? Yeah. Talking of final tables, shout out to Alex Todd. Now, I don't know him. It's not that I've, I don't think I've even spoke to him, but he has definitely played at my table before at the Benfleet game, and he just won the Goliath up in Coventry. So shout out to you, Alex. That was quite inspirational. I was watching the live stream, as was other people on that players poker group, and yeah, man, that was just fantastic. Really, really solid poker. I've already got the bug for poker, but just watching someone that I've sat at a table with go and win that thing was just like, wow, this is, it's there for the taking.
Bossed the big stack, didn't he? He didn't relinquish the big stack the whole time he was at the front table.
That is good going, isn't it?
It's hard. Good going. Yeah, and also big up to the Benfleet, massive.
The Benfleet crew.
Yeah.
Out to you. Wow. Out to you, Benfleet crew. Love it, mate. At Jon's Emporium. Really, really nice venue. Really, really nice game. Nice bunch of people. Love it.
Cool. So how are you getting there? How have you been? You've been practicing this week?
Yeah, I've been practicing opening ranges. So I don't know all of them, but I know quite a lot. Or I know the majority of each stack depth and position now. So I've been learning the kind of lowest suited card in the hand and all upwards, and then the lowest offsuit and then all upwards. So for instance, I know that at 40 big blinds on the button, you should raise with all of your offsuit eights. And when I say all of your offsuit eights, I don't mean 8-7 offsuit or 8-6 or 8-5. 8 being the bottom, the lowest of the two cards that you hold. So I've learned that kind of bottom end of your range, and then obviously you've got to add extra aces in, because even if 8 is the bottom of the offsuit, you'll often be raising like ace-4, ace-5 and stuff like that, so it goes below that. But I'm kind of getting the majority of the charts now memorized in my head for 3 different stack depths. So I've just gone for an M of 6 up to 10, and then an M of 10 up to 16, and then an M of 16 plus. And then I've broke the positions down into 5 positions, so button, cut off, hijack, low jack, and then just early all grouped together. And yeah, it's a lot of data. So I'm up to 120 bits of data now, because I've got all of the suited and offsuit aces, which ones you jam with pre-flop, all of the pairs, what pairs you jam with. And yeah, I'm getting that consistently right. I'm going over it 3 times, 4 times a day. So I'm kind of ready to go the next step now. And I'm a bit torn between, do I go into even more detail with the charts and start looking at which kings and possibly queens you open with a bit wider than the bottom of the, say, you know, all the offsuit 8s for the button 16 plus M. Would you know, there's usually like a kings down to like king 5 maybe, and then queen 6 or queen 7 might be in there, and just understanding all the curves of those ranges on the charts. So I could go that way, or I could go, right, that's enough as a base understanding. I can adjust a little bit knowing that there's extra kings and queens that get played, and then just jump. I kind of feel like I want to jump straight into 3-betting ranges next. That's kind of where I'm feeling like I'm going to get the most benefit, because I'm opening like loads more hands now, and it's working out really well. The couple of games I've played, it's gone fantastic. I played like an 850 runner tournament. Was it this? I think it was Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday night, and came 11th, which was just amazing. And what I noticed was different about this game was usually I'm kind of running at about 10M, 15M at best. And then it's always like, and then I have to make a bit of a risky play and hope I'll double up. This game I played, Tain, I was just riding in the green zone the whole way, like well in a comfy place. At one point I was in like the top 10 chip stacks, you know, with like 500 people left, and just riding this the whole way. And I didn't feel like I took any flips for my tournament life. I was definitely in a few flips, but it was when I felt like I was ahead, and it meant that if I lost, you know, I was still like well in the game. And so it just went really, really well. But as good as that was, it got to a point near the end when everyone was just free betting the hell out of each other. And I think that's because by that point you've got more of the better players left on those final 2 tables, and the better players, I just think, know how to free bet, and they know what 3 bets to call, and they know what to 4 bet. And it just feels like learning 3 betting is probably the most beneficial next step for me. And then I can come back at a later date and learn all the kings and the queens that I need to add to my ranges and whatnot.
Quality.
Yeah. What about you? How are you getting on?
Well, I'm reading up on ranges as well. Like, you inspired me with your learning ethos.
Nice.
So I'm still reading the J3o book. It's right in the middle. MTT, raise first in ranges. At the moment, I'm trying to get, because the way they describe them, even though they've got the grids and you can just learn the grids, the way they go through the construction of them is very different. And I think the O'Kearney book does it similarly, where it's almost like they've got a script of a good range construction, all the things that it needs to have in it, and they just reiterate that again and again and again. And the way they describe that is that then feeds directly into 3 bet, 4 bet. I mean, 5 bet if you're deep enough, but almost never in MTTs. And it's the difficulty is that I need to learn everything all at once. You can't pick and choose. Like, I can learn the ranges verbatim, but I've read too much about it. I've read this chapter about 3 times now, and I try to cherry pick a bit too much, and that causes me a little bit of problems, because if I'm cherry picking a 15 big blind range, but I'm accidentally playing it at 30 big blinds, there's actually a lot of reasons that's not just not good, but it's bad. Like, I'm either giving up massive value, or I was already playing slim equity, and now I've delved into I'm a losing player. Like I'm almost certainly going to lose money if I carry on doing that. So
is that because you'd just be more exploitable playing it incredibly like that, do you think?
Yeah, it'll just be too difficult to balance. So if I'm playing certain hands in early position that are just outside the range, or that are in the range at like 15 or 12 big blinds, because the strategy at that point is just shove or raise with the intention of shoving. But when you've got 60 big blinds deep, you might not even get it in by the river. So you need to be playing a hand that performs really well, or post flops. So picking hands that have got a little bit of raw equity, but sound like ace 7 offsuit. Picking that as the hand I'm going to play early position, and then trying to go hammer and tong when I hit an ace is just burning money. Like I'm out of position, so I'm just never going to realise that equity enough. My skill edge will never overcome that. So yeah, I mean, a couple of the interesting things I picked out. First, the main one that was really obvious is that I don't play King 8 suited enough, which is unusual because I play other hands far too much. But King 8 suited was in almost I think it was in every single range, and that's from 10 big blinds up to 100 big blinds, every single position. And I don't play it very often. I consider it a sub premium hand, and I should be playing it like a mediocrity, like a decent premium hand. What else did I learn that was really interesting? Oh, that was it. So low jack and earlier positions, they have a raising range at 10 big blinds, and I have definitely been playing shove, push or fold at 10 big blinds and lower from early position. But they have a quite, it's not a big raising range, but it exists. It's not a simple push and shove. But that's probably not too big a leak, really. But the really interesting thing is that low jack and earlier play far fewer hands at 60 big blinds than they do at 30. And getting my head around the reasons for that is really helping, and understanding why that's the case.
Because you can't wait, because you just can't wait, and you've got to increase the risk to make sure you're getting paid for anything that's even remotely got decent-ish equity.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons they're saying, especially as it goes past like the 40 big blinds mark, is that it's quite difficult to get all the chips in. So your positional disadvantage suddenly becomes king, and like not a king, but you know what I mean? It suddenly becomes the principal factor. So the best way to overcome your positional disadvantage is trying to get all the chips in as quick as you can. So you can bet bigger, you bet stronger. Your range is tighter, so you're going to be bluffing less as well, because you should be making better hands. So you can start building a pot and building it fast, so you can get your chips in to overcome that. If you can get all your chips in by the turn, you don't have to worry about playing at the river and did you realize the equity that you wanted to. Whereas at 60 plus big blinds, or even 40 plus big blinds, so rarely are you going to be able to manipulate the pot that you can get all the chips in when you're playing out of position. All these hands that don't have the best equity, even if they've got raw equity, they just don't realize it. They're just not going to come good. I mean, that's it. This is it. I'm still in the thick of it, and I'm still working out the nuance of that. But the fact that it baffled my mind that when you're deeper stacks, you should be playing less hands in early position.
So many things appear so counterintuitive to me, and then I'm like, why is that way? And then it just takes me ages, and then you're like, right, finally I get it now. But you just hear these things, and you're like, is that true? And you look online, and it turns out, like this seems to be what everyone's saying, and it just doesn't feel like the right way around. And it's I guess that's part of the learning journey, though, isn't it? Just delving into it and then understanding for yourself why something is so.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that O'Kearney mentioned in his book, that why it's so difficult to teach game theory to someone who's a seasoned player, even if they're not pro, just a seasoned player who's been playing a long time. It can be too difficult to undo probably most of what they built up. And the other side being that it's such a complex and in-depth way of learning. Like, to learn game theory is big, and you need to go into it full hog. The best time to do that is when you've just started learning, but it's also probably the most unlikely and most difficult time to do it. So until we get to a place where even if you're picking up the most amateur book, it's based on game theory concepts. Until that changes, like until that happens, it's learning game theory just gives you an advantage over both even the excellent new players who just haven't got to game theory yet, which hopefully was us at the start of this pod, and then the seasoned pros that try their hardest and just can't undo the unintuitive stuff. You know, like you just imagine you've got a big stack, you boss people around, you put pressure on the small lines, and it's like, no, not.
I liken it to like your golf swing, and you know someone who's played for years, they might be playing off a handicap of like 10. They're pretty good. They can get round, and they see the golf coach, and the golf coach basically says, look, your swing's really not, there's quite a few things we need to change about your swing to get it actually right. It's very difficult to hear that anyway, because you're hitting the ball well most of the time, but if you could just get through and get past that and get through it and learn the correct way to swing a club, then you end up being even better, and you end up getting a much better handicap, and you'd be off 5 or 4, but you've got to go through that period of it completely messing up your golf swing, completely messing it up, and it doesn't feel right. And you're not even getting results. So it's not like, oh, this doesn't feel right, but I'm playing better. It doesn't feel right, and it's messed your game up. You can't hit the ball properly. Yeah, and I think it's probably the same in poker. You've got all these bad habits. You can't see how something could possibly be correct to change, but you change it and it doesn't work out, because then you're not adjusting and then playing the other bits around it correctly to actually start seeing the financial gains. So then you just assume it's not right, and you just stick to your ways. And yeah, I can see how that happens, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that it can mess with you. I mean, even for me, I feel that I've picked up enough of it, and I've really taken to it deliciously, like wraps my arms around it and love it, that I can get enough out of it. I'm the bad bits that I'm making better are much better than any of the good bits which I'm maybe now suffering from while I'm trying to get my head around it. But yeah, for the most part, I'm glad that I picked it up when I did, because it could have got to a situation where it just was too far down the rabbit hole, and I couldn't do it.
Man. I think we've both gone into this J3o thing with quite an open mind, and it served us both really well. Like, we're kind of just letting it rewrite our poker game, and that's a good way to rewrite your poker game. It really is. Yeah. So should we jump into a hand?
Yeah, we've got what I would consider a bad range hand. I've picked this one specifically for its badness and me doing things in positions that I shouldn't be.
So basically a hand that you shouldn't have played.
Yeah, I mean, it might all just come down to the very first action, or it might be there's actually a bit of nuance to the hands that we can get into. But at the very least, I mean, it's not a spoiler to say I've got Jack-3 offsuit, and I decide to get funky with it, and I shouldn't. So
you're on the button though, right? You're on the button.
We are.
Jack-3 offsuit. Does it fold round to you then?
So let's have a look. So I am sitting on the button. We are playing 9-handed, so there's no good reason to be making moves. We're mostly sitting pretty around the table. It's very early in what is probably a sit and go. So everyone's sitting with anywhere between me. I'm the short stack, but I've still got 35 big blinds, and the big stack's sitting with 67. So it's really early, basically. The fact that I've lost a few chips means nothing, apart from the fact that if I'm then playing Jack-3 off, I'm probably not on my A game. So just to skip past, we do get folds from everyone right round. So I'm sitting in the button, 35 big blinds. We've got the small blinds sitting on 49 big blinds, and the big blind is sitting with 46 big blinds back. I've got Jack-3 offsuit. I'm the effective stack. My first action is to raise 3.1 big blinds.
Okay.
As in, it is obviously it's a steal, an outright steal, and nothing more than a steal.
Yeah.
The only other thing, I mean, I've already said it's early in the tournament, but the only other thing to note is we've only played 7 hands, so I've got no reliable information on anyone other than the buy-in of the tournament, which was probably quite low stakes. There's no reason to believe that this steal is going to work, but still I do.
Anyway, maybe that's why you've only got 35 big blinds.
It's almost certainly. So talk to me about this sitting in my range.
Yeah, okay. So, right, button, M's over 16, so what I consider the green zone. The button should be raising offsuit cards, 8s and upwards, so, and then obviously aces, so ace 2, so it's all of the aces, all of the offsuit aces, all of the suited aces, which means there's probably quite a few kings in there as well, maybe king 4 or 5 upwards, queen, maybe queen 7, it sneaks in there as well, but certainly jack 8 is probably the bottom of the range in terms of what jack to play. So jack 3 is quite a bit below. So yeah, this is probably a fold for me, like every time. I don't, it wouldn't have been, a week and a half ago, I could have quite happily opened it thinking, yeah, jack. But now with my new range skills, I would say this is a fold 100% of the time.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I was reading is exactly what you said, where this is quite a bit below. So if we're playing as low as jack 8 off, if I definitely would have raised in this position, especially if it's microstakes, we're playing like anything up to say $1, $2 sit and goes. I'd raise this thinking I've got both positional and skill advantage over the other 2 players, having never played them before, so that could be complete rubbish. But I'd feel I'd have such a skill edge that it doesn't matter that I'm playing some rubbish cards, because if they re-raise me, I can relentlessly bet any low flop knowing that they're probably playing strong aces. If they just call, I'll relentlessly bet any ace flop knowing that they're probably not called with an ace. And while that some of it's true, I'm giving up so much EV playing with crap that I can't overcome that with a skill edge. And even if I do, what's the point? I'm putting in so much effort to get this tiny extra skill edge when there's areas of my game that effort really needs to be in.
And there'll be easier spots.
Yeah,
there'll be
exactly
easier spots than playing 2 people you haven't really played many hands with yet, with a bit of a junk hand, not knowing if their calling stations are going to call. An ace might hit the flop, and I know you said there that if they just call with this 3.1 big blinds bet, they've probably not got an ace, but they might call with ace 3, and then an ace hits flop, and they just call it all the way down for, who knows, maybe their entire stack. You just don't know, like, what these players are going to be like. These low stakes games, anything can happen, quite literally.
Yeah. And so, yeah, basically that what I should be doing if I really feel that I've got that kind of skill edge is going from jack 8 to jack 7. And then I do that at different places within the range, but the right places as well, not just throwing in jack 3 offsuit, which is miles below anything. Because if I'm throwing in jack 3 offsuit, I should also be throwing in jack 10-5 offsuit, should also be throwing in ace 6 offsuit, and all of a sudden it's like, well, actually, how much am I adding in here? I'm not adding in an extra 5% because I think I've got a skill edge. I'm adding in an extra 20% because I'm an idiot. So yeah, mistakes all round, but let's see what happens. You ready to go to the small blinds?
Let's do it. What does the small blind do? Yeah.
Small blinds out. They don't want to see my free bet, my free big blind bet, and I get a call from the bottom. So it's exactly what you said, that would normally tell me that they've not got a hand strong enough to raise.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe not the very top of their range.
Yeah.
But a very good player could. They'd have that on a balanced range. A balanced range will
have aces and kings.
Yeah.
They'd probably raise like ace king, ace queen there, I would say, and they probably should. But pairs of kings and pairs of aces, definitely that's within there. Just flat call, because it protects the rest of that calling range, doesn't it? So when they've got those really strong hands in there as well.
Yeah. So we do get a call. The big blinds, I'm heads up now with the big blinds. Just a reminder, I'm sitting on the button with the monster of Jack-3 offsuit. I don't think it matters, but it's the Jack of Spades, 3 of Diamonds. The pot is now 6.7 big blinds, and the flop comes out as 9 of Hearts, King of Diamonds, King of Spades. Okay. So as you can imagine, I've got nothing, and
you've got nothing. But this is your board. Like, to me, this is a definite c betting board. The king is, you've got loads of kings in your range, and I think you've got more kings in your range than the villain has. This is definitely a c bet. That's my first thought. Represent it. Maybe even just go sick on it. You know, like, it almost doesn't matter if you've got Jack-3 now. You've done it. You're in the pot. You're representing, and yeah, you know, there's 2 high cards. The only trouble is he might have the 9. There's probably quite a lot of 9s in his range. You know, 9-10, Jack-9, 8-9. There's a lot, and that is a bit of a problem, because he might just look you up all the way to the river. You just don't know. You really don't know. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, I'd assume if he's got a 9, he's holding on to it, considering it's harder for me to have a king. And he's holding one of the 9s. If he's holding a 9, he's holding that 9. So again, it's harder for me to have a 9 as well. So he'd be up against a lot of hands he's beating. Any of the aces in my range, other than obviously ace king, ace 9, he's miles ahead of. Yeah, no, I fully agree. One thing I was looking at is, when this hits my range very hard, the choices are either to bet small, because there's just so many hands, which means I need a lot of bluffs as well, or massively overbet, because it's also the kind of flop that can hit their range well enough to call. And because this is a paired board, if they've hit that 9, they're coming along for the ride, so you might as well bet really big. But that's when you're betting for value, not when you're betting Jack-3 off, because they are going to be calling. Or you overbet if you feel that that's the only thing they're going to fold to. It's tricky, but let's see what the action is, because we're in house with the villain. They do check, as they should. All right. Is it range checking? I can't imagine too much they're donking within that on that board.
I think they need to leave this board alone. This is our board, really. 2 kings, 2 big cards like that. We need to decide now that we are holding a king and play this. Just imagining we're holding that king, ace king, maybe queen king. Like, let's play it like that, right? So we've got a king, we've got trip kings with a decent kicker. We want to call here, so we'd be betting maybe 2 big blinds, 2 point. There you go. You bet 2 big blinds.
So I bet exactly 2. So that is just under a third. Just under a third of the pot, about a quarter pot.
Yeah.
No, not quarter pot.
It's just under a third of the pot. We can read hands and agree on what to do, but we can't work out what 6.7 divided by 2 is. Anyway, right. So you bet just under a third of the pot. I think that's perfect. You know, for the reasons mentioned, we're representing that king now, and if we're going to do this, we need to do it all the way, baby. Let's go for it. What's the villain saying?
Villain comes back with a call. So playing passively, but they have calls, so they weren't scared by my initial bet. It wasn't a big bet, so they might be coming along with just ace high. I feel I'm keeping a lot of their bluffs in with that, but there is a lot of the hands that they would have got to this position and then just mucked because they're junk. Probably stuff like Jack-3 they're throwing away at this point. So it has strengthened their range. It's probably done absolutely nothing for my range, especially considering how bad this hand sits within my range. So we then go to a turn, and it's the 6 of clubs. So I'm sitting with the Jack-3 offsuit, and the board now is 9 of hearts, King of diamonds, King of spades, 6 of clubs. So I've got spade and a diamond, but they mean nothing. They meant nothing all along anyway. Okay,
well, I'm not. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say 10.7 big blinds now in the pot, and I'm the effective stack with. I've still got 30 big blinds back. So if I did have a king, or if the villain did have a king, now might be the point. Considering the 6 is probably a brick, it meant nothing to anyone.
It's got to be a brick. I mean, if he was holding 7-8, for instance, to now give him an open-ended, would he have floated the flop with 2 undercards and a backdoor straight? I can't imagine he would have even bothered. That being said, it was a smallish flop bet he could have floated. I think now's the time to bet a fair bit bigger. I'd probably go 3/4 pot.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the time that if my stack is going to get in, the villain's sitting there with, let's just say they've got, I don't know, quads or something like that. They've got the strongest hand at this point. They want all my chips to come in. They will have a bit of a hard choice out of position, but they need to do something. They can't rely on my betting alone to get my stack in, because even if I bet quarter pot, even if I bet pot, it's only just enough to get all the chips in, because I've then got to bet the river and not check behind. So I feel that this is probably their opportunity to show their hand if they've got a monster. Not necessarily, but their action should define what they're doing. I might be a bit wrong, or there might be better reasons for them to just be checking, but they do check. So it comes back to me.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't do much for. It doesn't tell us a lot, I don't think, because if the villain's got a king, then they're going to be slow playing this. They've decided to slow play it, which would look the same as if they've got a 9, or I can't think what else they could possibly have. Maybe a small pocket pair they might be doing this with as well. So you don't really know. I think whatever they had on the flop, they've still got on the turn with that check. Yeah.
I would only be expecting something different if they check raise. So, I mean, that's the only thing that would be on my mind. So a check behind in this position doesn't change what I feel they might have, but it stops bluffing the pot up. So, but I also am quite familiar with, if I'm not going to bet this street, it kind of is a give up. But then there's nothing wrong with that. I'm playing with a terrible hand that at this stage almost can't improve. If a jack comes, I can't bet it with confidence and suddenly think I've got a monster.
That being said, we decided we've got a king and we are playing it like we've got a king. To me, this is a biggish bet. Really represent that king. We're like, oh great, he's called our flop. Now let's see if we can get a big enough bet on the turn to then get our stacking on the river, which would be let's put 8 big blinds in.
So what are we targeting? Are we targeting things like ace 9, or what about queen jack? Is that a consideration? Are we jack 9, jack 10? Sorry, 10.
I think all of the gut shot straights. I think we're targeting. So you've got 10 jack, 10 queen, queen jack. The 9s, I think we're going to be really in a bad place. I think he might fold some 9s on the turn. I don't know, that's quite hard. Maybe the river jam would be enough to get him off of any 9s, possibly, but it's a real risk. This is just starting to feel like a really sketchy hand. To me, it's like, but that's the thing, we can't just bet the turn and then if he calls it, don't jam the river. It's, if we're repping the king, we've got to rep the king all the way. I think the jam on the river would fold some of the 9s. It would fold pairs lower than 9s in his holding. And then certainly the gut shots, if they miss, are folding to a jam on the end. Why did you raise with jack 3 offsuit on the button, Tain?
So we've got 10.7 big blinds in the pot. It is check to me. So I do continue. I do say that this board is still good for my range. My thinking at this point is that I would never let this go for a check behind with any of my value. So now I've got my bluff, of which, I mean, I need quite a lot of bluffs because I'm that board's fairly good for me. You know, just forgetting the fact that this isn't that. I feel that I have to at least try here, on the assumption that I can read the river to see, you know, did any of the straights or flushes come in? Well, there is no flushes, sorry, it's rainbow. So if did any of the straights come in, has the villain passively checked to me yet again? At which point I've got to assume if they check the river, they've got to have a mediocre hand at best, because that's just too risky. You've left my bluffs in my hands at this point, but now you kind of want to get the rest of my chips in. I feel that with no other reads, I feel that would be too wild with a mediocre hand, that is. So as you said, something like ace 9, queen 9, I'd consider the mediocre hands that come this far but would probably bet the river if it's a brick. So if it's checked to me, I'd have confidence that they've only got a mediocre hand, and then I'd just close my eyes and click bet.
Yeah.
So 3.2 big blinds into a 10.7 big blind pot.
So you bet a third pot.
Villain says, okay, let's do some of that, and calls. So we do get to a river. Okay, 17 big blinds in the pot. We've got 9 of hearts, king of diamonds, king of spades. The turn is a 6 of clubs, and the river is a 4 of hearts. So it is the brick. None of the straights got in. There was no flushes anyway. I couldn't imagine they're ever playing anything. They're not playing king 4, 9 4, 6 4, I don't believe. So
only
I feel that
only pocket fours, only pocket fours, which
may
they
got that far.
I would find it hard to believe they called the turn actually with pocket fours, but you never know. You never know. Maybe though, pocket sixes that floated the flop hit trips on the, hit a boat on the turn when their 6 came in, and then thought, right, I'm going to slow play the hell out of it now and let this guy keep betting into me. So I think pocket sixes are in there, but I also think pocket sevens and pocket eights are still in there because they were happy to call the flop. The 6 changes nothing. So like if they've got sevens or eights, so they'd probably call the turn as well. So I think that's still in there. One thing's for sure though, we have got nothing.
We're
it's air, man.
We're either folding or raising to get folds, aren't we? Like there is no other choices. We're not
outright bluff now.
There is no, I can't even put any of their hands that we're bluff catching at this stage, because even Jack 10's beating us. So like that is probably the lowest hand I would put them on, realistically calling to the flop and the turn. So something like 7-6, I don't think's calling that, or 8-7, 8-6 or 8-7. I can't see them calling the flop with undercards and a pair out there to then pick up a draw with a 6, which then misses. Like I just can't ever see him getting to that stage. I am not beating anything that they're holding, unless like nothing actually. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I don't think they have a range that I beat in any way or form. So I either give up, which ain't a bad, which probably isn't the worst if they suddenly come alive.
I actually think you should give up. I think your turn bet might have been too small, and now a big bet on the river looks really suspect. I don't know though. He could get folds. It depends if we don't know this villain. If he's not overly a thinking player, he might just be like, oh, he's only bet 2 big blinds. Oh, he's only bet 3.2 big blinds. Oh, he's bet 12 big blinds fold. Do you know what I mean? It could be that, and maybe a nice big bet now is going to get rid of even his 9s.
Yeah. The one thing I would say is, because my hand is so crap, and I'm in the unusual stage that I can't beat anything that they've got, in my opinion. They've got no bluffs. They've got nothing that's none of even their draws probably aren't getting this far, but without beating me in showdown. My showdown value, my equity might be 0 at this point if we could see our cards.
Yeah.
Therefore, a big bet, even if I get some folds, is a massive EV gain. And that's a lot more desirable than it normally would be. So if I was playing ace free and I got this far, the ace having enough showdown value, even queen free would have just enough showdown value that a check behind might be the best play. Whereas with I've got no showdown value, so any bet that yields any folds is quite a quantifiable risk versus reward. So if I felt another quarter bet would get folds from better hands, I'm getting EV from them hands because every hand he's got is better than mine. Yeah. Does that make sense? So there is value absolutely in betting on the end, even if I don't think it'll be very successful.
For sure, yeah. No, I think, we probably have just got to go all the way with this. We decided on the flop that we've got a king, and that's what we're representing.
Yeah. So the only question then is, does he have folds? And if so, are there any? What is the lowest amount of chips I need to put in to get folds from his worst hands? That's where I need to pitch this next bet, because there's no point me betting 10 big blinds into a 17 big blind pot if that risk isn't going to get additional folds. That's going to be enough compared to.
And equally, you've got to bet big enough to not give him the odds to call. So it's a tough one because jam feels a bit too big. But even a pot-sized bet isn't going to kill him.
But this is it. If I bet, say, 4 big blinds, I think I'm getting called by all of his air, pretty much. I don't think. There is a chance.
You've got to polarise, Tain. You've got to be going. You've got to be going pot, even 1.2 times pot.
I do feel that something like Queen Jack would be folding, but I just don't think there's enough in his range. Like, I don't know. I just don't have enough confidence that a very small bet's going to do anything. But it's trying to work up from there, because obviously the bigger I raise, the bigger risk it is. So I need more of his range to fold, and that becomes problematic when I can't. My hand doesn't stand up to any scrutiny, so I need 100% folds, and I need to find that I'm getting folds from 100% of the hands that I wanted to, and I've risked the smallest amount of chips for the biggest EV gain. So
you know what though, I just don't think there's any amount of chips he won't call. I think he'll call anything.
You reckon?
I feel like if he's got this far, he's got a 9, or he's got pocket 8s and pocket 7s, and if he's already decided to go for it, I mean, you don't cover him, but I suppose you would cripple him down to 12 big blinds if he called with, say, like Jack 9.
Yeah, the fact that I've got a Jack does block some of the hands I wanted him to have at this point as well. But then Queen 10, I personally think Queen 10 had come this far. Queen Jack would definitely come.
Yeah. In which case, Jack if you're just targeting the busted gut shots, then you could probably bet 6 big blinds and fold.
So that should be what my target is. I'm only targeting them.
I think that's a really good shout, actually. That you're targeting the gut shots. You can't expect him to fold a 9, because you, quite frankly, I think you could jam and he still call it. With 2 kings on the board, it's hard for you to have one. So yeah, let's go 6 or 7 big blinds.
You reckon a 3 big blinds? What is 3 big blinds saying? Is 3 big blinds saying, I think you're folding almost all your hands, but would you call this one last bet? Or are they going to look at it and think, I've got queen high, but I'm not throwing away 20 big blinds for free?
That's the risk. I think if you go too low, it just becomes I can't not call just in case this guy's bluffing with Jack 3 offsuit. So I think you need to go at least. I think you need to go. You need to get the lowest bet size that does the same job, but let's make sure we do the job. let's go 7 big blinds.
Cool. And this is all on the assumption that passive check call villain doesn't bet out. If they do bet out, it's instant fold, right? There is no overjam or anything like that. I personally I'd never be confident enough to jam over the top, so I would fold 100%.
I mean, if he bet now, that does change things. If he bet now, that actually puts some more. I think that makes him have more chance of having a busted gut shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly. If he bet, it might be actually right. Okay, let's jam. But equally, it could be he's just trying to get some extra value now because he's been slow playing a king. Yeah. I don't think he'd bet out with a 9. I think he's just hoping to pot control with his 9s and pocket 7s, pocket 8s. Yeah. Even possibly like pocket 10s. No, you know what? Pocket 10s upwards, he wouldn't have called. I think he'd have 3-bet you on pre-flop. So he's not got that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we need to reevaluate a little bit. I wouldn't rule it out, but probably, again, it's really high risk because I think he would be. If he bets, the villain bets on the end here, he's polarizing. He's either got a king and he's getting value, or he's got a busted gut shot, probably. But he's not got a 9. If he checks, then he's probably got a 9, or still maybe a busted gut shot, and he's just not wanting to bluff with it. In which case he would fold. So then you're kind of left with, if he checks, he's either got a 9 or a busted gut shot. And I don't know exactly how many combos there are, but there are slightly less because you hold the jack, which is a blocker. It's probably 50-50-ish, I bet. I bet it's 50-50, and then it becomes a really marginal, indifferent kind of, should you bluff it or should you not? Because half the time he'll call with his 9 and half the time he'll fold with his busted gut shot.
Yeah. Is that like I suddenly become the king in the Ace King Queen game?
What's that? Yeah.
The Ace King Queen, like where they've either got an ace or a queen. I think it's the Thinking Poker podcast like to go into the Ace King Queen game as a way of you're in the middle of their polarization. So exactly. without for other information to lean you one way or the other. Okay, should we see what he does?
Yeah, what's he do?
He checks. Oh, he's gone for 3 streets of checkies.
Now it's the time then. Do you take one last stab? Whether he's got the, and I'm putting my eggs in either he's got a 9 or a busted gut shot basket, but let's simplify and say that's kind of the 2 types of hands he would have here.
Yeah. My feeling at this stage is that flop, you either hit it really well or you kind of hit it lame. As in, I'd consider ace 9 hitting it well. Like you said, they're probably not folding ace 9. I do think if they've got something silly like a 9-3, they might fold. So I reckon in this position, I don't know what my last action was. I can't remember, but I would be taking some proper gusto and probably betting it. Let's see if I do just completely give up on the hand. But you said 6 big blinds. That's where you pitched it.
6 or 7, yeah.
So just before the last action, we've got the board is 9 of hearts, king of diamonds, king of spades. Turn comes the 6 of clubs, and the river comes the 4 of hearts. And I'm sitting there with jack 3 off. So rainbow board, or pretty much. And I've got absolute nothing, and I don't believe I'm even beating their worst possible hands. So I give up on the hand completely, and I just check.
Oh, you just check. What's the villain got here?
I didn't. Yeah. Now in the light of day, I can see the errors of my way, and they turned over.
Okay, pocket 3s.
Pocket 3s. They called 2 streets of value with nothing more than second worst pair.
Yeah, that was pretty bold. But then this is what I mean. Maybe a bigger turn bet would have shook him, because then if had it, a 6 would have been another overcard. I think he'd have struggled to put in 3, 7 or 8 big blinds on the turn, possibly.
Yeah.
But anyway, hey ho.
I mean, this is the thing that strikes me at this point is that it does expose the villain for not having any idea of how good that flop could have been for my range. That most of my hands are made up with things like King 8, King 9, King 10, King Queen, and then Queen 9, Jack 9.
If he knows that you know that, then he knows that you could be just playing the board because it suits your range.
Yeah, but then
you've got to pick.
You've got to pick your ranges, and the fact that he just called pre-flop is poor. He should be folding or free betting with threes. You're not going to realise equity out of position with that low pocket pair. That's just poor. You're throwing money away. Even if you're Daniel Negreanu, you're not making profit on a pair of threes out of the big blinds. Just calling in that position.
So I'd probably call it just with the sole intention of either hitting a set of threes or folding if I don't get it. But I've fallen into the same trap where you think, oh, I'll just see if I hit a 3. It doesn't come, but the flop's kind of, well, you know what? It's 2 kings, makes it less likely to have 1. You could have the 9. Maybe my threes are good. Oh, he's only bet a couple of big blinds. Oh, I'll float it. And then he's managed to get all the way to the river with it. Yeah, I've been in that situation. It doesn't make it right. But, when you're a bit deeper,
well,
early on in the tourney, sometimes these things happen.
Can agree with the play, but not out of position, because even when you hit, how do you realise your value? How do you know that the other players aren't just going to fold behind? You want to be in position to mine that set and really extract your value, because if you've got a bet out, say the board comes, say that 9 was a 3, do you check and hope that I raise, or do you bet out and hope you get a call? Either way, you just hit a massive, second nuts, and you still don't know what to do. You still don't, both of your possible actions can yield a loss. Well, not a loss, just not the gain that you want. So again, heads up as well. We want to do it multi-way because others are more likely to wake up with something. So but I think that the villain didn't appreciate my range, and the fact that it's not so much that my range was stronger, it's the fact that the small bets that I was doing was representative of any of the good value hands that I had. Even though I've done this with air, that shouldn't matter to the pair of threes. They're not winning enough of the Jack 3 offsuits that I'm playing to beat the massive array of hands that I'm also doing this with, that they're losing badly to, and they've just lost quite a lot of chips. I mean, it's so it's that 8.5 big blinds they've lost. Well, it's not a lot of chips, but they've lost all of them chips for chase. They're not chasing anything. They're just hoping that I've missed the flop, turn, and river. It just seems a bit.
If you did have a king, though, I think on that turn, I think you'd be an extremely disciplined player to only bet, like a third of the pot or whatever it was. Like, by that point, you've had a call on the flop. They're coming along. That's when you'd be like, right, let's get some value out of this trip kings I've got now. And I do feel like the turn bet was a little bit telling, personally.
Yeah, possibly. I don't feel that the threes were the hands to get to bluff catch that, though. I feel that even a pair of 7-6 is beating threes as a bluff catcher. I feel that the bluff catchers are pitched above that, but at the same time, I'm sitting here having lost the hand to the pair of threes, so good move to them.
All right, lovely, great hand, Tain. Thanks for that. And we've got another one, right?
Yeah, do you want to get straight in? Now, this one might be a lot quicker.
Yeah, let's go for it.
To flip things on its head, this is a better hand. This is a hand is still on the edge of where my range should be. I have made a small adjustment because I shouldn't be playing this hand necessarily out of position, but at the same time, at the stake I'm at, my adjustment is to go one step lower, which I think I was saying this earlier. So I'm sitting in under the gun +1. There's 8 people around the table. 9 people at the table. So there is still quite a lot of people to act behind me, and I'm sitting with Queen 8 of clubs. Now I believe Queen 9 of clubs is in the J3o opening range at this point.
Yeah.
Not Queen 8, but not again, quite, no. This is microstakes fairly early on, so everyone around the table has got 63 big blinds or more. So the effective stack is 60, 70, 80. Everyone's playing pretty much average stack at this point. It's also, when I'm playing a lower level, I do play a slightly wider range, but if I'm doing it right, it's exactly this. I go from Queen 9 suited to Queen 8 suited. I go from Ace 5 off to Ace 4 off, and just include them tiny little extras.
Yeah, definitely. Just open it up that little bit.
Yeah, with reasons. And yeah, I might add in a suited connector below what I'd normally do. But that was the idea here. So we are sitting 9-handed. I'm under the gun +1. Everyone's got roughly the same stack. We get a fold from the under the gun player, and I raise, you might be recognised it bet, 3.1. So obviously that's a button I've got. Yeah. Now I've adjusted this since then, because I tend to raise small up early. Whether that's right or wrong, I think there's actually a debate about if there's any benefit, because you want to raise bigger because people are less likely to call. But the problem with that out of position is that pre-flop you're much more likely to get 3-bet and 4-bet, and raising big makes it artificially inflates the pot to the point that it's really difficult for you to play with most of your range. So you'll end up being left with only your premium hands, and it's obvious what you got, because even, you know, if it's a 3-4-bet pot, you can't be calling with even your Ace 5 suited, or you could, but you're out of position, you maybe multi-way. So I've settled on raise it small. If someone does 3-bet, I can then if someone does 3-bet, I can actually comfortably 4-bet without overcommitting too many chips. Yeah. And that will get a lot of folds, even from the 3-better, that it overcomes my positional disadvantage. Whereas if I bet big and I get 3-bet, and as I said, even if there's a 4-bet, all of a sudden I might even be all in. So I've downsized this, but at the moment I'm sitting under the gun +1, and it is 3.1 big blinds. We get folds all the way around to the button, and they call us 3.1 big blinds, and the big blind also calls. So we're multi-weight, 3 of us in the pot, and the pot is now 11.15 big blinds, so 11 big blinds essentially. And the under the gun play, the big blind is the effective stack, but they've still got 71 big blinds back. So
very deep.
We're really deep. We should be playing premium hands in this point. We should be very conscious about building the pot if we hit a monster, and very cautious about building too much of a pot with top pair, for instance. But let's see how it pans out. We go to the big blinds and they check. So it goes to us, and the flop, I didn't say what the flop was. So the flop comes down as the 7 of spades, Queen of hearts, Jack of spades. And I'm sitting in under the gun +1 with Queen of clubs, 8 of clubs. So I've missed my clubs entirely, but I have hit top pair.
So this isn't a premium hand, multi-way, I wouldn't say. Queen King is, Queen Ace is. But Queen 8 is kind of good, and you definitely want to continue. And I would say you probably want to bet as well. You were the pre-flop aggressor, but I think it needs to be pretty small. It needs to be quite small anyway, because it's multi-way, and especially so that it's, you know. In fact, I don't even mind just checking this. I think there are better queens out there on the button. You know, Queen 10, Queen 9's calling, Queen Jack with 2 pair. Even Queen King, I think, would just be calling. So there's a lot of better queens. You know, for pot control, and to allow the button to play his position and maybe take a bit of a bluff, even if he's not got a queen, is beneficial as well. So I don't mind checking here, but equally a small bet of maybe 1/3 or even a bit smaller, maybe even a quarter pot bet is probably my two options there.
Cool. Two questions. There's 3 of us in the pot. I was early position. Then we got the button, and then the big blind who is getting a fairly decent price to call. Who has the range advantage? And closely followed by that is the big blind checking range. Are they checking everything at that point?
Yes, I would say it's probably pretty good for your range. In all fairness, I mean the queen and the jack are broad, 2 broadways and a 7. You know, you've got some gut shots that are in the button and the big blinds ranges more so than yours. Maybe more so, maybe not. You've got king 10s in your range. You've got ace 10, ace king. So I think this is your range. Yeah, I think this is your range, and it does warrant a C bet. Just I think a small one, 2 players in.
Sure. So I am conscious of the draw, but I'm also conscious I'm probably the only player with queens and jacks as my possible holdings. I believe both the button and the big blind would be raising queens or jacks, especially against an early position open. Pocket queens or pocket jacks. So sitting there with a set, which would be, you know, the effective nuts with either of them hands. I don't think either player has that. So
no, I think you've definitely got the nut advantage.
Yeah, cool. So I feel I would be betting here most of the time. I do appreciate the check as well. I feel like in a multi-way pot, there's a good chance I'm ahead. Not strong. I don't feel that I'm guaranteed to be ahead by any means, but I also do feel I need to deny a bit of equity to that draw. So a bet, not too much of a bet, because all of a sudden the pot will start looking enticing if it gets a call. So someone with that, I'm trying to deny equity to say the big blind, I raise quite big, and then the button calls quite big as well. All of a sudden they're getting a good price to be calling that flush draw. So I do choose to bet. So we had a fold from the big blind, fold. We had a check from the big blind, and they brought it around to me. I've bet exactly a third pot, but I think that is 3.35 big blinds into an 11.
Bit under a third. I really like the sizes. Yeah, 28 or something.
Yeah. So I feel that's denying enough equity to the range of hands that do have spades out there.
Yeah.
Let's see what action we get. Goes to the button, who calls, and the big blind, who elects to fold despite getting quite a tasty price. So we are now heads up. I'm the first to act. There is just shy of 18 big blinds in the pot. And just a reminder that we had the 7 of spades, queen of hearts, jack of spades, and the turn comes a 5 of hearts. I'm sitting first to act with queen of clubs, 8 of clubs. Again, our stacks are still sitting well over 70 big blinds. So if I, for some reason, thought I wanted to get stacks in here, I've got to do an insane amount of work. So I don't think that's the case anymore. I think we are just going for small value, but showdown value as well. There's also two flushes out there now. So someone who didn't even have the flush draw might have now woken up with one, and neither of them on my flush draw. So that's now on my mind also. But I'm, again, my conscious thought here is that a check would look weak, and the fact that there's 2 flush draws out there might embolden all of the bluffs in the villain range to come alive. And I might call with my top pair rough kicker, but I'd also probably have some folds in me as well. there's a lot that could be not just a little bit ahead, but could be destroying me.
Yeah, it's really tricky because you don't. I mean, you kind of want him to bluff, but then how big a bluff do you call with your queen, pair of queens, and 8 kicker? But equally, you don't want to build a big pot, and you could bet trying to block him bluffing too big to make it a really tough decision for you, and it have the opposite effect, and that making the pot much bigger for the river when he misses his flush and then does bet massive, and or the spades and the heart or the hearts come in and then he bets big and represents it, and I think whatever happens, this feels like it's going to be a tough river, and for that reason I think a bet or a check is good still. I still kind of don't mind either, but I would start leaning towards a check for pot control. I don't think a bet now would be a blocking bet that kind of stops him bluffing too much. I think it's just going to build the pot, and then he'll still bluff massive on the river should he miss.
Yeah, I mean, with a 2-tone board, it does also, with 2 Broadway cards, it kind of sets up I don't know the significance of this, like a kind of a joint nut draw possibility. So if they were sitting there with ace jack, even though I'm still beating it with my queen 8, if they've got ace jack of hearts, they're now drawing to the absolute nuts with aces and out as well, any aces and out, and they've got the jack already. And similarly, if they were sitting there with the ace queen, if that was ace queen of spades, not only have they got me crushed, but they've also got me multi-crushed. You know what I mean? So I've now lost I could have lost one of my 8s as an out as well. So it's not, it means that I'm really struggling to improve against either of them hands. It creates a lot more problems for me, given that any of their ace hands could now be nutted. If that draw even comes in, it could be that I can bet, knowing that the most likely hands that I'm struggling against could be, if a brick comes, I might not be too bad. So where did you land?
Is ace queen a 3-bet for the button pre-flop?
Offsuit, probably. We are pretty deep. An ace queen, does it perform? It performs better in position. The only thing is
ace queen of spades, for instance, like you were saying, where you've got that top pair ace kicker drawing to the nut flush of spades. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it is or not. That's what I need to learn. It feels like it might be a 3-bet though.
I think that there's a chance that might be in the protection range per se. So you call with that as one of your really strong hands that, so you're not only calling with the weak stuff.
Yeah,
because ace queen suited performs so well post flop, because most of the hands that I'm raising with, ace queen is either dominating or is fairly equal to. There's only, the only things that it's not doing well is queens, aces, or ace king. Everything else that's well within my range, my opening range, it's really doing well against. All of my aces, which is a massive part of it, it's dominating. It might be dominating every one of the suited hands at this stage. So yeah, it might be well within their play that is a good check at that point, as protecting their calling range. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I also feel that the villain's playing with a hell of a lot of other stuff that might have got this far.
Okay.
So where did you land? Was it where did you are you feeling Betty or are you feeling checky? Check him. Right, I'm the hero. I've got top pair and I choose to bet. I smash it straight in because I'm relentless. That is something I'm working on. I think I would bet 100% of the time there, whether that's the right move or not. I get it. So I feel that I'm out of position and I've got no choice. But I feel that if I check, I have to fold to most of their big bets. So bet bet and show the strength, so that if I feel that I want to go wild and raise over the top, I've still got top pair, and that might be good at that point. So yeah, the pot's 17.85 and my raise is 5.35, and I'm gonna guess that's 30% pot again. Maybe just under. Yeah, no, it is. It's 30% pot. And I know that's 30%. I've got a button that says 30% on it. So 30% pot.
Yeah.
What are we most like? What is our most favoured act? Do we actually want to call from the villain? Do we want to fold? Do we want them?
Want to call.
I mean, obviously a raise is bad news.
I think it's a call here. Like, you can start ruling out things like 2 pair now. Like, there's 2 flush draws on the board. He'd want to protect Queen Jack, Jack 7 suited. He'd want to protect all of that. So yeah, I think if he calls, you're probably ahead, except maybe to King Queen and Queen 10, possibly Queen 9.
Yeah, and they wouldn't have bet the flop if they've not got the right. If they're not playing on the flop, they're not playing spades. King Queen, maybe with a single spade, the King of Spades, they might have just called us.
They did just call on the flop, didn't they?
Yeah, but they still had the big blind to act behind them, so allowing 2 players to come in with a flush out there, I feel that the King Queen isn't a possibility. I like what you're saying about the 2 pair. I'm just working out what we are targeting and how much.
Yeah, I think we're targeting all the
range.
jacks. We're targeting all the jacks. I think there's even, he's possibly calling with some 7s, although that's harder to believe. I think, we're targeting jacks, aren't we, really?
Yeah. I would say there is a chance we're targeting his 9-10.
Yeah,
he's King. I don't mind King 10 at this point. I also feel that I don't mind his either flushes coming for the ride. My plan would be that if I feel that I'm targeting the draws, if a brick comes, I'm checking to induce that bluff.
Yeah.
That I think would be my plan. Whether that would be the right plan or not, that's my action. That's what I intend to do. But I'm betting here. Hope if he raises me, I'd probably fold.
Okay.
Not certain, but I probably would. And if he calls,
there's a lot of draws though that he'd be bluffing with if he did raise you here. Like all the gut shot straights. There's now 2 flush draws on the board. There's a hell of a lot of bluffs if he does raise you.
It's more that he's got. I'm not sure if his value is to raise here as a bluff. Does he not want to try to realise that equity bet? Does he not get more value by if he's playing like a combo draw? He's better to be calling so that when that comes in, he's getting extra value. A raise here was getting rid of all my bluffs, especially as he might then just be getting called by whatever's beating him. Okay, let's see what the action is.
All right.
I digress.
So the pot's 17.85. You bet 5.35
to make the pot. So the pot pot goes up to 23 big blinds, and we do get a call from the button. So another example of a passive check. Not check there, just call. That it's not that it rings alarm bells, but it does give me some trepidation. Like someone who's sleeping with a monster. Let's just say they got the other 2 queens. It's probably the only thing you can imagine they would want to do.
He would have 3-bet with pocket queens, pocket jacks. He could have a set of 7s. But
or something like that. Yeah, a set of 7s. A set of 7s would be no. Well, this is one of the funky J3o things that I adore, the counterintuitive things. If you're sitting there with a pair of queens and a pair of jacks, you're actually incentivized to check because the hands you want to bring along and induce bluffs from are ace, queen, ace, jack. Whereas if you're playing with a set of 7s, you can bet out with complete abandon because the best hands that are coming for the ride, you've not blocked. you've got the ace queen still in there, you've got the ace jack, you've got queen jack. So bet with your bottom set, because you're blocking nothing. Whereas if you've got queens and jacks, you're blocking everything. You're blocking all the 2 pairs, you're blocking all of the ace queen, ace queen, ace jacks. You're just hoping for straight draws. You're not going to get much value out of them, especially if it don't come in. So yeah, pair of sevens is really scary at this point. Although that should be betting, it should be betting good. It would have got calls from me, so bets would have been good. But that's not to say they're not the type of player who will sit on a pair of sevens and rub their hands together thinking, I'm going to make millions here. Okay, so the pot is now good, sitting at 28.5 big blinds. Just a reminder that I'm sitting early position with queen 8 of clubs, although the clubs are irrelevant now. The flop came 7 of spades, queen of hearts, jack of spades. Turn was the 5 of hearts, and then a very complicated card falls down, the 8 of hearts. So it's a small hooray, I've just hit 2 pair, followed by a real wet blanket of, it's made any flush draw that they could have been playing.
Yeah, and there's that, it was only ever a back door, but if he did have something like king jack of hearts, would play exactly this way, and he had the jack on the pair of jacks on the flop with king kicker, and then he's picked up the flush draw and he's happy to keep going, and now hooray, he's hit his flush. There are some worrying holdings, but I think there's also a lot of just jacks that have come along. There are those queens that beat you, the queen 9, queen 10, queen king. They, now we hope they've got those because we're suddenly ahead. So this is pot control. We check with the intention of calling.
Yeah. I mean, just
pretty much anything, because I think he's got more busted straight draws than he has actual heart flushes here. I think he's got that flush. That's a perfect bluff on the end if he's got king 10, for instance, and he was chasing that open-ended straight draw, but just so happened the third heart hits the board on the river. That's a perfect card for him to just bluff at, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, just a small consideration, the 9-10 just made it. I don't know how much that actually. No, that was an open ender on the flop. They very much would be playing 9-10 exactly how they have.
Yeah. That's got there.
So
I think that one would be pretty disciplined as well, because although they'd be like, oh great, I've hit a straight, the flush is still there.
Yeah,
so although it is a backdoor flush, it's not the same as the spades coming in. It's a bit different, but
yeah, and exactly that. If they've seen the flush, a check might get a check behind. It's not a try and call. If they expecting them to bet, they might be checking that straight, thinking, any other 8, and I'll be doing well here.
I'd be happy if I check and he checks behind. I'd be happy if he bets anything, even up to pot. I think I'd be happy to call, and then just I hope I've got it. I think this is just pot control now. Maybe a blocking bet, but I'd rather not. I'd rather keep the bluffs in his range, and if he's going to bet, it not just be with the flush, and that actually there's loads of busted straights in there as well. So I would check here with the intention of calling pretty much anything within reason.
Cool. And you don't feel that there are enough hands that I'm beating that would still call a third?
There's all the jacks.
Straight. Are they calling with everything that's out there now? I mean, obviously Jack 8 will probably be calling, but that's a specific hand.
That's the thing. It's a good question you ask, because I don't think there are loads of hands that you beat that would actually call. So you'd be betting and only be getting called by better. So I mean, that's not entirely true. Sorry, you've got 2 pair. There's queens that would call you. There is king queen would call, I think.
Yeah, ace queen. I forgot.
Ace queen. We
do block that.
3 bet. I feel like there's some queens. So maybe it's another borderline one, but I do kind of feel like this is a check call.
All right, let's see what me being the hero does. Of course I bet. I told you I bet with abandon. I've got no first gear. So I have bet. I'm going to guess that's 30% pot again. So I've gone 30%, 30%, 30%. You can tell I'm getting trigger happy with that button. It might be that I can't see the other buttons, including check, and that's the only button I've got left at my disposal. So the pot is now 37 big blinds. I am still sitting with 56 big blinds back, so there's no real worry about jams over the top. So there is still maneuverability if I do get raised here, and maybe that might have been my thought process. I actually don't mind if I get called. I feel that there's enough bluffs in his range that even if he bets over the top, I can call it, and I'll just take it on the chin if I'm losing to his flushes, and but I'm going to be beating a lot more with that range, with that bet, just because things like the straight would probably just be calling, that most Jack 5 and the other jacks are just calling, and that there's even a possibility that a pair of 5s is folding in this position, something like that. I mean, you've got to be a fairly good player at these stakes to be folding a set of 5s just because you're worried that there's now a flush out there and a straight.
You'd be a pretty bad player.
What if you call?
If you folded a set of 5s here, I think that would be bad.
There is a lot that beats you, but I'm not giving you too much of a price to take a punt. I feel that you'd be trying to bluff catch, or if you're feeling bold, raise over the top. I don't know what better you'd get to fold though. So let's have a look. What do you think the villain does?
I don't know. I reckon he calls you. He's been calling all the way.
Call. He does. He calls. So
he's got Queen 10.
Yeah, I don't know what these stats mean. Apparently, I've got 89% equity at this point. I don't know why it thinks that. I'm just looking at my poker tracker for anyone listening, because I've only just noticed it says that, and I don't know how it would ever know the villain's 11%, unless it thinks that Queen 8 is winning against their entire range. It just seems strange. Anywho, let's move on. We finished with 45.65 big blinds in the pot. I started with a hand that is in my range, so it could perform better, although it still was tricky out of position. You ready for the big reveal?
Yeah, what we got? I'm guessing Queen 10 though.
You're going Queen 10? This is going to be something absolutely baffling, I'm sure of it. Yeah, it was 9-7 of clubs. They were never playing the flush draw. They were never playing the straight draw. They were playing bottom pair on the flop.
Bottom pair with a 9 kicker. I think that's quite a bad. I think that's quite bad from the button. I don't mind his call. 9-7 suited. He's in position, but do something better with it than just call all the way down with like third best pair against 2 opponents on the flop. I just think that wasn't great play from the villain, but that's great news for you. Well done for the value bet on the end. I think I'd have been more cautious, but it definitely worked out for the best.
Yeah, I think this shows the value in 2 things. First of all, that these quarter bets, especially at crap stakes, are going to get calls from things that we never at any stage put their calling range on something like bottom pair after the flop. We just assumed it weren't going to happen. But the other thing is that 9-7 is in the button's calling range, I believe, at that point, but not for the reasons that they've then displayed. It's the reason 9-7 is good is because it can heavily connect with the board, or it's not. You've got no problem throwing it away. All right, you've hit bottom pair.
Yeah,
you've either got. Don't just call.
You gave him, you kept betting 30% pot. You gave him the price to stay in, I suppose. But once you're kind of 4th best pair on the board
against the flush draw, and
there's a flush out there. The straights come in. I can't see this was the best. I don't know what he thought you would be betting just under a third of the pot on the river with that he beat, because it's not a great bluff, is it? What with the only card on the board that you've paired would be the 5.
Yeah.
And he was calling that. So I think it was a particularly bad call by the villain here.
I mean, the other thing is that he's got position, and even though I'm playing top pair, there were times that I'd consider folds. Even with 2 pair on the river, there are times that I'd consider folds. I probably would call with 2 pair. It might be a crying call, but I'd consider a fold. And if I had the wrong feels about it, I probably would fold. They if they're gonna play bottom pair, use it to your advantage. Like, try and you can't bluff catch. Like, that surely can't be your only.
He needed to turn it into a bluff on the river. He
Yeah.
should have realised when you bet a gain on the river, you've 3-barreled this. He must know he's behind with his pair of 7s, 4th best pair with a 9 kicker. He needed to turn that into a bluff. The flush got there, albeit a backdoor flush from the flop. But the straight got there, and he could easily represent 9-10 on that flop for sure. That he should have turned that into a bluff and bet big. Calling's baffling. Calling doesn't make sense. I don't know why it's that.
I mean, just one thing that I thought of, which again strengthens he should be bluffing on the end, is that my turn and my flop and turn bets surely couldn't have been with the intention of chasing a backdoor. So what am I betting with that also managed to get lucky with a flush on the end? I mean, you're only really looking at ace-7 of hearts or ace-jack of hearts. Now, while both are plausible, everything else in my range missed that flush. So when I continue the exact same size bet, as though I'm trying to tell the exact same story I've been telling since the off, you've got enough back that you can make an informed bluff, and it would have been successful. If that, say for instance, that 8 was a 9 or a 6, I'm folding that. I reckon. I don't think I've got it in me to be calling just a single queen, no kicker, essentially. And then you're validated in playing position with 9-7, because even though you've hit your 7, you're turning it into a bluff, but you're doing it properly. The only thing I would say is that, especially down our local pub game, one of the things that I've noticed is that now I've started playing, I'm trying to construct my bluffs with things like double back doors. Players have noticed when I hit one of them back doors and I've got something really silly, but it's not silly. It's a genuine, I think, what was the hand the other day? It was 8, 10, 8, 8-6 of clubs, but I was in the big blind, and there was one limper, and basically by the end of it, I'd hit my club draw. No, I'd hit my straight draw. Sorry, excuse me. So I'd hit my straight draw, and then they turned over and went, "Oh, you were chasing that the whole way down. Oh God, well, look what you're playing. Can't believe you raised with, 8-6 suited. Blah 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 blah." Not realize, and I'm sitting there thinking, at every stage I was just playing ABC poker with my ABC range. I was betting because I had range advantage. I had, everything that I was doing was for a very good reason. The best bit, though, is that because they've seen me do this with silly hands, I'm now seeing the other side of building a real good balanced range that I'm now getting paid off on my super value.
Absolutely.
So now I can.
If you can play a wider range well, then when those big hands come in, people just pay you off.
Yeah, I felt bad about it because I took out one of the players at the weekend who, they're getting on for years, and they go there and they just want a good game, but they made it so obvious they had an ace. So when I'm sitting there with my set, it was just, I tried to do a geometric size to make sure all their chips were in by the end, and they thought they were bluffing me. And it's like, well, if they're bet on the end, and it's like, you're not bluffing anyone. It's so obvious what you got. And it's just turned over. I've turned a boat at that point.
Nice.
Yeah, they sent them home, but it was, I was just thinking, like, I would never get this value if they thought if they hadn't seen me play silly, what they think was silly hands and wild, crazy plays. So yeah, this is it. Build a real balanced range, and you will eventually start getting paid off with your best of it.
I've noticed a similar thing just with playing sort of this more J3o opening ranges. I'm playing more hands, and people are three betting me more, which is what I need to learn. But I am getting paid when I've got good cards because I'm in a lot of pots. I'm in a hell of a lot of pots, and when you're in a lot of pots as well, you hit more straights, and you're just in it, so you see more. You've got more chance of making stuff.
Yeah, and the number of times I'm hero folding as well, because when you play this amount of hands and you know what ranges you're putting people on. Like I threw away. What did I throw away? Yeah, ball came out ace queen 10, and I had queen 10 2 pair, and I threw it away because the person who jammed, I put them on a range that never had worse than 2 pair, and they definitely didn't have queen 10.
2 pair was great.
Yeah, or a set, or they'd already turned king jack for the straight. But yeah, they had ace queen for 2 pair. But
wow, good fold.
There's a lot of times that's happening. It's because, again, it's not that we're just opening our ranges up with abandon. We know exactly what we're doing it, when we're doing that, who we're doing it against, what range that then looks like for them.
Yeah.
So when a tight player is playing under the gun and they're raising it, that's putting them on just a few specific hands. So you can then start getting away from these really, really tough spots. Yet people think you're playing wild because you're value betting what looks like to be value betting just a rubbish straight draw that luckily gets in on the end. But it's all part of the same beautiful plan. It's lovely.
Lovely, jubbly. I love that. It's the more I play, like the better I'm getting at the game, the more enjoyable it's becoming. And maybe that's because I'm winning more, or it feels like I am winning more. Like, I think mainly though it's the confidence that I've got whilst I'm playing, feeling like I can read hands like on the go now. Like playing hands in a bit of a wider range than I usually would, and then hitting a flop and kind of knowing where I'm at, and knowing whether I can just continue to bluff at a flop. There was a couple of times in this recent tournament I played where I was bluffing pretty big, and I just felt so confident to do it because I just knew he would fold. I just knew he had to, unless he'd done something really off whack and had a holding I really hadn't predicted. But anything that beat me, anything that would be able to call me was well outside of the range he'd be in the pot with, and it's just giving me this confidence, and it's a good feeling, baby.
Yeah, it's quality. One thing I've noticed, like I never used to be able to play multi-table because my attention was too split. Now I always at least have to play 2 tables because a few elements of it become too autopilot if I've only got 1 table open, and I actually find myself switching off a little too much and I don't like it. So I have 2 tables open to make sure that I've got my attention where it needs to be, and I can follow that without any loss of skill. It's rare that the action's going so fast that I can't pick it up before my timer runs out. I do sometimes 4 table and it goes all wrong, but sometimes I'm a fend and I just need action. I just need to stop that, basically. It's only ever for like $1, so I'm not too worried.
I do sometimes play 2 tables, but since doing these J3o charts and sitting at the table and every single hand just going right, this position with this stack depth, and then working out and trying to visualize the range chart for that hand and that position of stack depth, that I can't do that on 2 tables at the moment. It's too much. I'm still kind of going through my head. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, yeah, that's my offsuits, that's my suited, that's my aces. So I can't do 2. I'm back to 1 table basically for the foreseeable, because I've got enough to be thinking about on it while I'm trying to work out my exact range every time.
Yeah, but that's quality. That's like purposeful practice. Like yeah, I need to do that. I need to be practicing with a lot of purpose. But I'm getting there. I feel I'm now in a position like you are, where I need to have a few sessions of almost throwing money away, but just to really drill down into my live action ranges and
it's such a hard
practice.
bit, but I just looked online at a couple of ways of trying to memorize these charts, because I kept looking at these charts thinking, how does anyone remember these, grids and all these, and then I just looked up that technique that I've mentioned a couple of times, and it's just completely changed it for me. Suddenly I've found my way, and I've got a spreadsheet that has the bottom of these ranges, and the aces and the pairs, and I'm good at remembering strings of numbers. So now I know that, a button deep stack is 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, and that's a sequence of numbers, but I know that 8 is on the button, 9 is the cut-off, 10, and these are the bottom of the offsuit cards that I play. And I've just found my way, and I know I keep going on about it, and that's the third time I've mentioned my technique now, but it's quite exciting for me that I've found a way to remember these ranges, because ultimately it's a big part of J3o and big part of getting better at the game.
Yeah, that's something I want to put in our book, how we became the best players in the world despite having ADHD, is the benefit of having 5 different ways of skinning a cat, pardon the phrase. Like, the way I might learn a range is different to how you learn a range, is different to how someone else learns a range. But what's important is you try all of them, and one of them will stick. One of them will be like, bam, there you go, you got it. Rather than trying it once, or that didn't work, and just looking at the range charts thinking that means nothing to me and never doing it. You have to try it 5 different ways, and you'll spark something in that little dopamine bit that we need. And it will sell millions, even though there's not that many people with ADHD playing poker. Other people will buy it just because they love it and they love us. Obviously.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. Well, anything else before we wrap up, Tain?
No, I apologise. I feel like I've waffled for a long time. So thanks to anyone who's got this far.
I think it's been a great session, and thanks for the listeners for listening. It's a bit of a mammoth recording, this one, bit of a mammoth pod.
We shout just to wake people up. We're done. All good. Cheers. Thanks, folks. But no, I do appreciate anyone who has stuck with us this long. Like, kudos.
Yeah. Wicked, man. All right. See you in Vegas, everyone.
Take it easy. Thanks, man.
Take care.